Claire Trindle. Thanks for joining us on Serves You Right.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've got a lot to discuss today, a whole world of beverage, but I thought for the listener it would help to kind of give your background and how you got into being one of the most unique and educated person in one very specific field in all of Philadelphia. So, yeah. What got you into doing what you do?
Climbing down the rabbit hole of apples.
Yes.
Well, I'm from Bucks County, which is just outside of Philly, and the first job I ever had was at an apple orchard, which I wasn't imagining I would come back to apples later in life, but I always think back to how funny it is that it was my first job and now it's my passion. And I didn't realize it growing up. I just considered it just to be part of like the nostalgia of the region I'm from, but orchards and apples were everywhere where I grew up. And when I became older and more informed, I learned that Pennsylvania is the fourth largest apple producing state in the country. And that that evoked a lot of pride for me because I really enjoyed the connection of understanding where things are from and how they're made. And while I love wine, I am somewhat basic as a wine drinker. Like, give me a Sauvignon B or a Rosé, and 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be happy with it. But I feel more of an affinity towards something that's like a local agricultural product that's like from where I'm from. And so, yeah, I grew up outside of Philly, came to Philly for college. Throughout college, I always had some sort of service industry job.
As we mostly do, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I've basically hopped around and have done every front of house position. I really enjoyed doing them, and I found myself at a certain point behind the bar, and that was when I really felt like I had found my mojo. I really enjoyed tending bar. I love connecting with people. I love getting to know someone and understand what they enjoy and then creating something for them and like building them a cocktail that they like. And so I did that for a number of years, and then at a ton of different venues, concert venues, cocktail bars, dive bars, everything.
Because you need the like experience throughout the whole thing. It's important to see what all is out there.
And then I hit a point where I wanted to learn and not just have a transactional bartending job. I needed a little bit more of a why. And then I started picking up more intentional bartending jobs like craft cocktail, where I had a manager that mentored me and, showed me the ropes a little bit more instead of just throwing me behind the bar and saying like, good luck kind of thing. And then COVID happened. A little bit before COVID happened, I co-founded a mobile bartending business with a friend of mine, and it went great for a few months, and then COVID happened, and people didn't want to have private events for safety reasons, and so we pivoted to being somewhat of a bootlegging business. I would drive to South Jersey, buy a bunch of random booze, make different mixed drinks, and basically sell it to our friends. And at the time, it was really hard to get hands on alcohol consistently, so we were providing a service that people needed. I don't know how legal that was, but I think at the time Philly was dealing with other stuff, and I don't think that we were making enough money to be on the radar at all. So fast forward to fall of 2020. Well, March of 2020, I had 3 bartending jobs at the time and this business that I had established recently with my friend. March 2020 happened. I lost all 3 of my bartending jobs, had way more time to invest in our business, so really leaned into the bootlegging situation. I realize it's not actually bootlegging, but I'm just calling it that.
Yeah, I mean, it's evocative enough of what it is that it's like, oh, it's a good description.
No one was killed. No one. Yes. I wasn't yeah, I wasn't interacting with gang members or anything like that.
Well, we should add yet too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
But I was transporting alcohol over state lines, so guilty for that. But so late 2020, September, I was reaching out to a good friend of mine who I met bartending at a dive bar. He was my bar back, and that's how we became friends. And I messaged him seeing if he wanted to hang out, and the place he was working at was super understaffed, and he was just like, I'm not available right now. We're super understaffed. And I said, oh, you're understaffed? Could I maybe, how would you feel about me working with you again? And he was like, I would love that. And he worked at a cidery. And so I started working for a cidery that was in South Philly. And it was a tap room and a facility. So it was the kind of place where you sat at the bar and you could see the fermentation tanks behind, or through the glass. And I had only worked for one other cider brand before that, Graft. Are you familiar with them?
I'm not, no.
Okay. So Graft is an amazing cider brand. They make sour and tart cider for the craft beer drinker, and they have crazy ciders. They use all types of adjuncts. I'm going to use a lot of fun words on this.
Oh yeah, no. We're going to have to dig into a lot of these too, but yes.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So an adjunct is anything that's added to the recipe of a cider that isn't apples. So if I added raspberry, the adjunct would be raspberry. Hops, anything that is not the apple is an adjunct.
Which is exactly the same in beer brewing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So fun word one of the day. And Graft made crazy ciders, and I was a brand ambassador for them. So I would be posted up at different bars and retail spots, bottle shops, and I would be that person in the corner or at a high top with a bunch of ciders to sample, and I would interact with people and convince them to try the cider. And so that was the one cider job I had, and I didn't realize that I was working for the kookiest cider brand out there. Graft they have a very iconic flavor profile. They make just really insane, awesome, cool ciders, and they're all dry. And so I found myself really enjoying interacting with people about cider and changing their minds about cider, because at this time we're in the era of Woodchuck Strongbow, Angry Orchard.
Yep.
Basically, those brands, the products that they're distributing to mass markets is product that tastes like Martinelli's sparkling apple cider. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I had the notion that cider was sweet before I worked for Graft. And then I learned, oh no, cider can be as bone dry as anything. And so I had already worked for Graft. Then I started working at this cider company called Hale and True. And I ended up working there for 4 years. I fell in love with cider. I fell in love with the work culture, and I loved working with the owners and the other staff that were on the team. And I worked there for a year as a part-time bartender and vendor. I would go to different farmers markets and stuff like that. And then
Cool.
And then a year in, I started managing, and then I managed for 3 years. So I learned so much during that time. I got to see the process firsthand. The owners, it was a husband-wife team. The husband was a cider maker. They would host cider making classes. You could buy a ticket and learn how to make cider and go home with a 1-gallon carboy. So I got to do that a couple times and make my own batches. So I started really understanding what cider was, how it's made, and it was all coming from just this approach of curiosity and no level of pretentiousness. It was just fun learning, and I just really loved it. And after I left Hale and True, I was unemployed for 8 months, and during that time I decided to study to get my Pommelier certification. So we're finally getting there.
Heck yeah.
So to get a Pommelier certification, you need to first pass the Certified Cider Guide test. And that is an online exam. I believe it's timed. It's been a few years since I took it. I believe it's timed. I believe you get 2 chances to take it. And if you read through the 20-page study guide packet that the American Cider Association provides and you're paying some level of attention, you're going to pass. So I had already attained that a few years prior, but the Certified Cider Guide exam is much more in-depth. It's essentially, there's 5 different areas that you just dive into. Like one of the areas is like just apple varieties and like learning about different types of apples. One area is production. One area is like growing apples and the farming techniques and like different types of orcharding styles. And another section is ciders of the world. There's so many different styles of cider that we don't really even see in the US. We are the only continent in the world that calls cider what everyone else in the world calls juice. Isn't that crazy?
Weird. Why?
Sorry to interrupt. I promise this will be fast. If you are listening and you like this even a little bit, please go onto whatever platform you're on, Spotify, Apple. Just give me a quick rating. It is the smallest thing in the world, one tap of the finger, and it does mean the world to me and helps us reach more people. All right, back at it.
Because we need to be different for some reason,
Yes.
even when it doesn't make sense.
It's somehow tied up with like the imperial system of measurement. So like something.
I don't love that. Like everywhere else, like in France, it's jus de pomme. That's just apple juice. There's different types of apple juice. Like the brown stuff that we see at the farmer's market, at the grocery store, that's just a different type of apple juice versus that clear stuff that is a little bit more like filtered and refined. Like those are like in the world, everyone else calls that juice.
Is it vestigial prohibition? It's like you need to have the naming convention to show that, oh, I'm drinking apple juice, non-alcoholic versus cider. Maybe.
I
Maybe
couldn't
it's
tell
one
you,
theory.
but
Yeah.
I can tell you that at least once a month, a group would come to Hale and True and be disappointed that we didn't have hot apple cider ready to serve people. Like, we took that juice and we fermented it, people. Like, come enjoy that. But people always had this, they would be like, wait, you don't serve hot cider? And yeah, I mean, if we happened to receive a juice shipment that week, like, we would have some juice if people wanted to try it, but that wasn't a menu item. So,
This is not what you're thinking, yeah.
yeah, and so I just think there's so many misconceptions about cider, and I just think starting there is kind of helpful. Like, what is cider? So
Yes.
So when I say juice, I'm talking about the brown stuff, and when I say cider, I'm talking about hard cider, alcoholic, adult beverage cider.
Okay, got it. Yeah, there's so many threads and you talking through your history that I could pull on. I think that what is cider is a great place to start. Because in my head, I kind of imagine cider as apple beer. Like, that's just kind of how I think about it. And I'm wondering how similar is that process and how different too? Because beer is, you have to cook it for so long. Like, do you have to transform apples into fermentable sugars in the same way? Like, how does that work?
Excellent question. No.
Cool.
Cider is apple wine. So the same way that you would ferment grape juice to become alcoholic wine, that is exactly what you do to cider to become hard, or juice to become hard cider. With beer, you're starting with a water base and then you're adding the base ingredients, boiling it to break down those carbs to become sugars to ferment. With juice, there's already sugar there. So there's no boiling, or I hope there's no boiling. Think about it in the same way. It's like, imagine tasting like store-bought orange juice versus when you freshly juice oranges. Like, the taste difference is just so different. I'm sure someone out there is using juice that they shouldn't be fermenting it with, but
pasteurized weird. Yeah.
But so yeah, it's you start with a base of juice or concentrate, and then you add water, and then you pitch yeast. And the way I have seen cider makers do it, I don't know if every cider maker does it, but before pitching the yeast, pitching just means adding the yeast to the batch of juice. They rehydrate it first, and to like awaken.
Oh yeah, that's pretty standard. Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's how I've always seen it, but I don't know. I don't know every cider maker in the world, so maybe some people don't do that. But so that you awaken the yeast and you start to smell that yummy, bready, yeast coming alive. And then, the yeast eats the sugar. The sugar becomes ethanol and CO2. And then the yeast flocculate and fall to the bottom of the tank. And then at some point, depending on the cider maker's choice, they either rack the lees off. Lees are the yeast that have died, and racking is just when you open the bottom of the tank and have a hose drain out the dead yeast. And once you see it running clear, you close it, and then you have no lees in your fermenting juice. Some cider makers and winemakers do a technique called sur lie, that is French for on the lees. Some people look for a certain flavor profile that is the cider sitting on the lees, but the cider makers I have interacted with don't do that. They don't enjoy the flavor profile that comes from that, but I always try to be very careful about what I say is a fault or a flaw, because that can be culturally incompetent. Some cider makers and cultures of cider makers are like, they're intending to create certain flavors or drinking experiences. So what we might consider to be a flaw might be like something really special about how a different culture makes their cider. So a great example of that is like Spanish cider.
What do they do?
They love acetic acid. They love letting the apples do their own thing. It's very, very Spanish of them. It's like not gentle parenting. It's hands-off parenting. They let the apples do their thing. They use natural yeast, the yeast that is already in the container or on the apple skins, and it ferments in there. They're not adding yeast. And Spanish cider, or sidra, tastes like it's on its way to becoming vinegar. And some people love that, and some people would say this is flawed. I would not say it's flawed.
Send this back. Yeah.
And another really cool thing about Spanish cider is it's still, which we don't see a lot in America. Still means not carbonated, not sparkling. So to give it some body, they pour it from a high level. Sometimes they use something called a perron, which kind of looks like a bong. It's this like pitcher, it's like a glass pitcher, and you pour it from a very high distance, and they call it like the high pour, and it creates some level, you're aerating it, and it's like creating some level of like perceived carbonation, and it's intended to be enjoyed like a few sips at a time, eat some Spanish food, a few sips at a time. So there's these folks that work at these cideries in Spain. Their profession is called an escondidor, and they are literally the high pourers, and they just are walking around constantly refilling people's glasses. The day that I make it to the Basque region of Spain will be a great day.
The happiest day of your life, yeah. They're like a Brazilian restaurant, but instead of like giant things of meat, they're pouring cider into everyone's cup. That's cool.
Yeah.
I am very, very like comforted knowing, like I'm more wine dominant in my knowledge, and it sounds like there's a lot of things that are very analogous. Like Surly is exactly the same thing in wine, like, and also good branding on their part, because Dead Yeast Cells sounds terrible, but Surly sounds great.
Just say it in French, and it always sounds a little fancier.
Exactly. Yeah, and as you were talking about the like, what is one man's flaws, another person's like signature, I was actually thinking about like classic Barolo, classic like Italian wines. There are a lot that have like detectable amounts of VA. Like there's like an oxidative aging environment, and I'm glad that you went with Spain, because it was like, yeah, exactly the same thing. It makes sense to the Spanish with their sherry. Like they do have a little bit more of a like an acceptance of sort of those secondary biological, signatures. So like they're used to these flavors of oxidation in controlled environments. Like, and also like, yeah, you may not like this cider, but a lot of different recipes call for a little bit of apple vinegar. It's like definitely a little bit will not kill you. It actually adds a little interest. And as you're talking about tapas, I'm like a little bit higher acidity probably is good to cleanse the palate and get you ready to go for that next round too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that once I have that aha moment with a consumer or a wine lover or a craft beverage person, when I say cider is wine, people usually say, "Oh, like I thought it was beer with apples in it. I thought it was juice with vodka in it." People just don't understand what it is. And yeah, there are a lot of similarities in the vocabulary and the techniques from wine, but there are also some rules that cider is not allowed to follow that like winos have claimed. So for example, a cidery is not allowed to label their cider with a vintage.
Why not?
Because
who knows? Okay, yeah.
Because wine is cider's hot older sister who made the rules and decided that cider just can't do that, which is just interesting. And I mean, I don't know depending on who you are, I don't know how important knowing the vintage is, but I just think it's an interesting and, to be honest, silly rule.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
What would beverage be without a bunch of interesting and silly rules? Two questions I have about the production process. One, I feel like I'm being silly, and you're going to just instantly dispel me of this myth. First, in my head, I'm imagining kind of a conveyor belt where you got fresh, full apples coming in, and then they crush them, juice them, ferment them. Do they remove the pulp, or is pulp part of the process? Because I'm imagining that's got to be like a lot of organic material if they don't take it out.
Totally.
Yeah, let's start there. There. Let's not overload it.
Sure. So the first step is pressing the apples. So there is a conveyor belt, yes. And
awesome.
And so the apples are being crushed, and there is pomace that's being collected. Pomace is separated from the juice, and pomace is just the apple chunks and the skin chunks, and I'm sure that's what people now use to make fruit leathers from.
Oh yeah.
But,
okay, cool.
So the juice is separated from the raw materials, hard material, whatever the
fibrous materials. Yeah.
And so I wouldn't say the juice is chunky, or it might be a little pulpy. I mean, you can't really see through the like brown cider juice, but that's just because it's raw juice. That's what you're getting. It hasn't been filtered. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I think in my head I was kind of imagining like a full apple pureed, and I think it's probably better to think about it as like the difference between a pureed orange versus juiced orange. You still have that pulp in there, and it's probably not clarified, but it's not like like a mush. It's not applesauce. Yeah.
Well,
cool. Well, maybe not. Yeah.
Fun fact about back in the day when it was safer to drink alcohol than water, what they used to do, and by they I mean in colonial times when the Brits came to America with cider knowledge and equipment, they would take the pomace and re-ferment it with water and make a low ABV cider, like 2 to 3%, called cider kin. Do you speak German?
No, but it's like family, like little brothers. Right?
So kin means child, so like kindergarten. So cider kin was literally for the kids. And so the kids were getting a little loopy, the adults were getting a little loopy, or a lot more loopy. And so it's just so interesting culturally that was, I mean, but before all of these technological advances and, ways to detect, unsafe bacterias in products that we're consuming, especially water, which is essential to life, they were giving the kids some hooch juice.
Yeah, which sounds irresponsible until you go back to that time and think like, would you rather do that or give your kid water that could possibly like get them sick and kill them? It's like, would you get that as a choice? It's like, yeah, let's give them some of the little like weak cider. Mm-hmm. Live to fight another day.
Yeah, and cider used to be used in like as a currency. It was used in political campaigns to win people's votes. Johnny Appleseed was a real guy. His name was John Chapman. He was this rolling stone of a guy that would go to different towns and teach people how to grow apples and make cider. Growing apples is very interesting because one of my favorite facts about cider and apples is if you took a Granny Smith apple and you ate it and you took the seeds out and you were like, I'm going to grow a tree now. If you planted that seed, you would eventually get an apple tree. It would not be a Granny Smith.
Why?
In order to get a Granny Smith apple tree, you would need to go to a Granny Smith tree, cut a scion, which is a small cutting of the tree, and take it to a rootstock, and it's called grafting. You're basically fusing the rootstock and the scion to one another, and then they will eventually become one, and then that will grow a Granny Smith tree.
Okay.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. It's the similar situation to grapes. They don't let grapes usually grow from seed. Uh-huh. Just because there's that, that
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, they just keep cutting and keep having the same clone over and over and over again. Uh-huh. Which is weird. Yeah,
That's so interesting. I'm finally feeling ready to start my wine education journey, and I'm so excited to see what all the things that have commonalities.
Oh, this too. Yeah. Well, you actually, it's funny when you were talking about the process of passing your Pommelier. It sounds very similar. I'm CMS heavy because I've been restaurant. I've heard a little bit about WSET, but I just don't know it as well.
Sure.
The level 1, it's what I tell pretty much everyone. Like, if you do the basic, like if you study a little bit, pay attention, because you have to take the course. Mm-hmm. There's a study book. Like, if you are a thinking, reasonable human being that pays attention, like, you will pass, especially if you work in a restaurant. Mm-hmm. Like, I would be shocked. And the pass rate is like 90%, because it's like the people that just get in their head or like have never worked in a restaurant, like, when you keep going after that, that's when it gets a little harder. Sure. Just kind of like the same with you, like certified, advanced, the pass rate drops off the cliff, but it's because they ratchet up the difficulty.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, with the Pommelier exam, it's 2 parts, and there's a written theory part, and then there's a tasting analysis part, or it's called sensory analysis. And
so yeah, exact same thing.
one thing that I appreciate about the Cider Association as a I'm not a strong test taker. I was the kid in school that I would rather write a 20-page paper or do a presentation than sit down and take a standardized test. My brain just doesn't work that way. And I was feeling really worried about taking 2 sections of an exam, both timed. Just because that's literally my worst nightmare, test format wise.
Yeah, wake up in the middle of the night screaming from that nightmare. Yeah.
But what I loved what I appreciated about the Cider Association is they created they allow you, if you don't pass one section, but you pass the other, you only have to retake the section that you didn't pass, which I love. I think it's so pointless to make someone retake a section that they've already passed just because they didn't pass the other one. So luckily I passed both sections the first time, but when I was taking it, I felt really confident that I knew my stuff, but I was writing until the last moment. I was one of the last people in the room. Both sections the papers were taken out of my hand as I was writing a sentence. And so the first portion is around 2-hour written theory portion, and it talks about all those 5 sections I was talking about, like ciders of the world, keeping and serving cider, growing apples, like apple varieties. And so there were some short answer questions, there were some essay questions, and I mostly felt confident, but again, just the anxiety of not being a strong test taker. So there's 2 hours of that, and then you get a 15-minute break, and then there's about a 2-ish or maybe 1.5 hour tasting portion. And the tasting portion is 2 sections. The first section is 15 minutes. You get 3 ciders, and you have to answer 3 questions, and they're true or false questions. And it's something like cider A is less tannic than cider C. Question 2, cider B is higher residual sugar than cider A. And so you really have to assess
really the structure. Yeah.
So it's not, and that being timed, like 15 minutes isn't a lot of time. But yeah, I prepared for it. I brushed my teeth without toothpaste that morning. I didn't have any coffee. I think I ate like something very light and like flavorless. And I had been training my palate at that point for years, and I knew all the tricks. I knew, sniffing yourself to reset your
which
palate.
Works is amazing. It works,
yeah.
I
knew one person gave me the tip of holding, once you get a glass in your hand, to like release the aromas faster, putting your hands around the glass to warm it up faster because your body heat. So yeah, that was the first section of tasting portion. And then the second section was you had to do a full assessment of 3 ciders. And the full assessment, it's this sheet. You're basically creating a profile of the cider. You're going over the appearance, and that's everything from color, depth of color, carbonation or non-carbonation. And then the next part is aroma. So you're assessing the aroma. And then the final part is palate. And then at the bottom of the sheet is a final assessment where you're kind of making it's not what would be on like the back of a wine label, but it's kind of just saying like this cider has these characteristics that come through in XYZ, and it is not flawed, or it could be flawed, or perhaps it's this style, and you're kind of just you're assessing it deeply. And so after my exam was done, I felt confident, but I thought if I didn't pass, it's not because of my knowledge gap, it's because of time.
Sure, yeah.
And then a little bit of time went by, and I saw an email come through, and I waited for my partner at the time to be home, and he read it to me, and the beginning of it is very misleading. It's kind of like, "Dear Claire, thank you for your time. The Pamalier exam is X, Y, and Z," and like we videotaped me like hearing it, and you can see my face go like, because I'm like,
yes.
I'm like, this doesn't sound good, but he's reading it as neutrally as possible, and then he's like, "Congratulations, you scored passing in both sections. You are now a certified Pamalier." And I'm just like, I like start like crying because I'm just so happy. And so finding out I passed was amazing, but you have to keep it private for a few weeks because the ACA, the American Cider Association, likes to announce it. And so I told a few friends, but I was like trying to keep it under wraps until it got like fully announced. And that was amazing because that made me the 3rd certified Pamalier in Pennsylvania. It made me the first Philadelphian to be a certified Pamalier, and it made me the first and only female certified Pamalier in Pennsylvania. So I feel very proud of that. There are still fewer than 200 Pamaliers in the world, and I just think that it's such a special and misunderstood and misrepresented beverage category, and I really love talking to people about it.
Yeah, no, it shows, and congratulations. That's
Thank you.
it's wild how many things are similar, but the subtle differences from the wine world too. So, but I don't want to harp on that too much. I was hoping, and like again, I have like 5 different avenues I could take from that, but I thought it'd be helpful to kind of dig in, because in my mind, I'm picturing the way that I learned to taste wine, and I'm blind tasting, doing the different, like going through, they call it the grid, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the process you use to develop your palate, because I think that would be something that would be very interesting. I'm assuming it's analogous, at least.
Totally. I remember switching a lot of my personal care products to no fragrance. I remember that being a big change
Which is
for
important,
me.
yes.
I remember, what else did I do? I just got really intense about always kind of assessing anything I was eating or drinking and carrying around that assessment form that's used during the Sommelier exam. So I was just constantly exercising my brain. Even if it didn't have to be alcohol, it could be coffee. I would assess it and just get used to that over and over and over again. And also, while I studied cider, I would blast lo-fi music, and I would always be drinking cider while I was studying it. And especially
a tough life, yeah.
I know. Especially reading about the sensory experience, because I'm trying to get a vocabulary as I'm drinking it, and I'm trying to create more, I'm trying to make more connections in my brain to get comfortable talking about it, because I hear people say to me, my palate's so bad, you're so amazing, you can say all these things, and it's well, I've been practicing for years, and I've been reading all of these different books on tasting cider, and yeah, I mean, if you spent a month with me drinking cider, you would probably be able to talk better about cider. It's an exposure thing, and it's a repetition thing, and I imagine that's it. It's like with diving into anything. It's not just alcohol education, but literally any craft or talent you're trying to refine. It just takes time and dedication, but definitely just protecting my sensory tools, not smoking
helps a lot.
Yeah.
I'm a former smoker, and when I quit, it changed my tasting a lot.
Yeah,
a lot.
I'm also a former cigarette smoker. I'm so glad that was something that I had already quit before I started, because that would have just really inhibited me. But I did get COVID while I was studying. not after I left Hale and True, but during my time when I worked there, and for about 6 months I couldn't smell or drink or smell or taste anything, which is such a strange sensation, especially when you're eating spicy food, because you can feel your body processing it, but you can't taste anything. And I was so scared that my full tasting and smelling capacities weren't going to return. And after 6 months, they started coming back slowly, but it would always kind of hit a wall. And that was a very hard time emotionally. I was so worried that I wasn't going to bounce back and have the same level of precision in my sensory analysis experience, and I'm just so grateful that I did bounce back and got extra good at it. But the friends that were around me at that time were all very worried for me, because they knew how important it was, and they could see how I was struggling. The positives were, if my friend didn't like their drink when we were out, I would just be give it to me.
I don't care. Yeah.
I'm basically like a dumpster right now. I can eat and drink anything, and I literally can't taste it.
Yeah, sardines and crackers, why not? Let's bring it on. Yeah. I got COVID too. Funny enough, COVID is what got me to quit smoking, because I was in the process of trying to quit, and I was stepping down. I did the patch, and as I finished is when I caught COVID. And it's the first time in my life when I was quitting that I had some reason that I couldn't break and go get something. I couldn't go get cigarettes because I was quarantined. It was at that time.
Wow.
And I was a monster to be around. But
can I ask
on the
what
other
kind
side
of cigarettes you smoked?
I was about a pack a day.
No, what brand were you?
Oh, so I was usually Camel filters. Yeah, I like, I would dabble here and there, Marlboro Reds every once in a while, but usually Camel filters.
Nice.
But yeah, I know it worked, and I was like, thank God, I'm never going to do that again. So I'm like, I haven't touched one since because I
Good
remember.
for you.
I can't wait for another pandemic to come through. So afterwards, my smell I thought came back very quickly, but it was one of those things that after about 3 months, because I was working as a bar manager and doing a lot of different tastings, the ones that would come through like 2021, because it had come back a little, but not fully. And for like months, I remember just being like, everyone is bringing me garbage. Like I did not like anything. And then finally I had this one tasting with a local guy, and like every wine he brought, I was like, this wine freaking rocks. This wine, I was thinking about putting them like by the glass. Like I'm like this, like, and it was like a cheap Cahors and like, random stuff like that. And it was like, I realized after that, I was like, oh, my smell hadn't come fully back. I just got it back now. Like,
yeah.
Like it was one of those silly things. It's like, when I realized it, I was like, oh, these wines aren't spectacular. I've just been misjudging everything for months.
I can appreciate that. Yeah. That's so funny. Well, I'm glad we both got it back, because some people, it never fully comes back, and that breaks my heart. The idea of not being able to fully enjoy or savor something that's in front of me. It's wild.
Just kind of going back to cider, because there was a question that I had wondered about, the natural fermentation limit of cider, because grapes are pretty unique as far as I understand, and how high they go in fermentation. How alcoholic would just a natural cider get on its own?
Most ciders are naturally fermenting between 6 and 8%.
Okay.
Depending on the apple variety or the blend of apples used, it could be a little higher or lower, but that's the general range. What's happening next is, and this is why I think there's this perception that all cider is sweet, is it is then being doctored, meaning it's being watered down or back sweetened or something, which is lowering the ABV, hiking up the sugar. And so that's why I think there's this perception that cider is just apple beer, because a lot of the time it's in a can, it's around 5%, and it tastes like apple soda. And the only style of cider that is an exception to that is sweet, is French cider. French cider goes through a process called keeving, where all of the sugar, the original sugar from the juice, isn't consumed by the yeast. Fermentation is arrested. It's called arrested fermentation, meaning it stops halfway through, or actually I don't know at one point, but it stops. So some sugar remains, and then French cider is generally in the 4.5% range, but it's balanced out with this beautiful, almost smoky barnyard. I find this to be a pleasant descriptor, but you might laugh, horse blanket taste.
Okay, so there's probably some Brettanomyces in there.
Oh, yeah. They're definitely playing around with Brett, but it's not. Oh, this is something I wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about acetic acid in Spanish cider, and the whole the notion of faulted or flawed. For me, if the fault, if let's say Brettanomyces is the fault, if the Brett is overwhelming the entire drink, for me that is undrinkable. I won't say it's faulted or flawed, because perhaps that's what the maker intended, but I use the phrase undrinkable, meaning I cannot enjoy this. I think it's the same if I were to have a natural or Spanish style cider. If the acetic acid was just overwhelming and there were no other notes that were balancing it out, I would consider that undrinkable. French cider is so lovely because it has this beautiful, fresh, appley sweetness, and like it almost like you can tell that they're just using like excellent, yummy, like fresh, crisp apples. But it's balanced out with that lovely smokiness, and so it tastes really nice together. It's not just this cloying sweetness. It's a full, complete flavor experience.
I mean, it's like any of their pastries, you know, rich, decadent, but, you know, somehow balanced and, like, not too much. You know, like, you just, like, they love just, like, little bitty things, you know, just a little bitty package, just a little bit of everything. That's cool.
I'm going to put you on to something. It's my favorite snack and drink combo. I love French cider with barbecue chips.
Okay. You get the smoky, you get the sweet, you get the salt from the chip. That makes intuitive sense to me.
But I just love that a flavor from the American South and a flavor from the Normandy region of France somehow, because the notion of if it grows together, it goes together, and it's always fun to pair products that are from the same region. Terroir is a thing, all that. But I also love finding those interesting exceptions. Like, I would not consider American Southern flavors and French flavors to be in the same weight class. You know what I mean? And it goes together so well. The potato chip, like the potato and the apple, they match each other. And then there's that sweet smokiness from both parties. It's just, next time you see a French cider, please buy it, and then please go get some kettle-cooked barbecue chips, and you let me know how it goes.
The only homework that I will accept on this show, yes. No, you know, I do like that. You see those weird combinations, like, in my head when I was kind of hearing you talk about how they doctor the ciders, add the sugar, I was thinking, like, you know, when you say it that way, it doesn't sound great, but, like, that's exactly what they do in champagne. And, like, champagne's a great example of, like, two different, like, champagne and oysters. Like, nothing about champagne is coastal, but those two go together very well. Like, yeah.
Does champagne get doctored, or you just meant...
No, like, dosage. So, they will ferment it till it's completely dry and then add back the sugar, which... Okay. Which is interesting, actually, to think about, because most people don't think about champagne as sweet, but it's probably just because they just don't add enough to really cross that detection threshold. Well, in the modern era, at least. Yeah. Cider being sweet was one of the big things I did want to ask you about, because I know that perception's out there. And is it like, if we just polled, like, the general public about wine and most people had only tried Moscato, then they'd be like, yeah, wine's sweet, super sweet. Like, is that like a similar-ish thing? Is there a reason that a lot of sugar is being added?
I think that in America, we have some unhealthy obsessions, and I think one of those things is sugar.
Sure.
But I know people that are more interested in dry ciders, and they will only drink dry ciders, but I don't want to poo-poo sweet cider, because in the same way at a cocktail bar, your vodka drinks and your tequila drinks are going to pay the bills. At a brewery, your IPAs are going to pay the bills. Sweet cider pays the bills. So I'm not mad at these commercial brands making what people think they want. I am of the belief that you have to tell people what they want. So I wish that cideries made, well, the cideries that I spoke of earlier that are making these like sweeter commercial ciders, they don't just make sweet cider. If you went to their tap room, if you went to their facility, they have other ciders, but those aren't the ones that are being commercially distributed. I have had a dry Angry Orchard cider that was lovely. And I just, my only wish was that that was being shared more with consumers. And I find a lot of labels to be misleading. Sometimes you will pick up a can of cider and there will be some weird dry to sweet scale that they made up and they'll say it's dry, but then when I look up how much residual sugar is in insert name, it'll say 11 grams or something, which that is high. That is not dry.
That's detectable for sure. Yeah.
Right. That is so we got a lot of work to do, but my goal in my cider loving life, or one of my goals, is just to spread the word, inform people, help them understand what it is so that they can understand why they do or don't like certain styles of cider. I am a huge advocate for cider deserving its own section on a menu. It is not a seltzer. It is not a beer. If it's going to be under any pre-existing section, it should be under wine because it technically is a wine. But cider deserves its own section. It deserves more than one spot on the tap line. If you went to a bar and there was one draft line for beer and the beer was a stout and you happened to not like stouts, would you say, I don't like beer? That's the problem that we're seeing with hard cider, is there's one line, it's usually a sweet cider, so no wonder people think it's sweet. You know? It's not the consumer's fault. Like, they're being given a list to pick from, and I get it. So cider deserves its own section on a menu, and I love it. I adore it when a bar does that well. And there's a few places, I'm gonna shout out Sleeping Village in Chicago. They always have a cider section on their menu. It's awesome. So I love going there. And they have different types of ciders. It's not just all sweet ciders. I was in Austin, Texas a couple of months ago, and there is this business called Cidercade, and it is literally an arcade
with
that
cider
serves cider, and it's a local cidery that provides all of it. Their name's Bishop, and I don't think I've ever seen so many ciders listed on a tap list. It was I was a kid in a candy shop. I literally was drinking a hopped cider while I was doing one of those car racing games. I was like, this is amazing. I love this. So any place that has a cider menu is just, they are trailblazing, and I really am a big advocate for that.
Yeah. Kind of funny. I was just in Denver and they have a beercade, but neither here or there, but still fun. Different product.
Yeah. I love arcade games. To me, it's so nostalgic. Yeah.
Do you think that cider will get its day just due to the growing prevalence of so many people that are going gluten-free, whether by choice or dietary need?
Yeah, I think that we are currently in the renaissance of hard cider. Let's do a quick history lesson.
Sure, yeah.
So about 100 years ago, cider was the most popular beverage in North America. Something happened, Prohibition. So I call them the fun police, decided to chop down all the orchards because apples turning into alcohol were allegedly ruining society. And at that same time, German immigrants were coming into the U.S. with beer brewing knowledge and beer brewing equipment. And so an apple tree takes an average of 5 to 10 years to be grafted, grow, flower, fruit, pick the apples, juice them. So 5 to 10 years to grow an apple tree and use it in a product, that's a long time. Compare that to having all the ingredients you need to brew beer and make, how much how much beer do you think is being made in 5 to 10 years in America, And so, so that's why we are now currently seeing a renaissance in hard cider, because apple trees are back, and they're back and they're not going anywhere. So I think that's why we're seeing it now. I also do think it is a gluten-free thing. I think it's marketed that way. Oh, another point of preaching for me is cider is not a consolation beverage. It's not oh, you can't have beer. Here's this one option for you, and it's sweet or something else that you like don't enjoy.
It's like that one non-alcoholic drink on there for the non-drinker that sucks.
Yeah, it's like here you go. It's like I would rather you just not have it if you're gonna do that. So yeah, I do think that there's a boom of, folks with the dietary aversions. I also think that there's a current boom of people caring more about what's in the stuff they're consuming. And so I think that is helping the craft beverage world. People like to know if it's local. People like to know if it's vegan, for example, or something else. So yeah, I do think that people are becoming more informed, and that is pushing producers to diversify their portfolio. But still, the majority of cider that's being consumed in North America is sweet cider. And so thank you, sweet cider, for paying the bills. I can't really drink a lot of it. If I get my hands on sweet cider, I usually use it as a cocktail ingredient to kind of modify it a bit. But some people like sweet cider, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Tony Abougadam was on the show, and he always said, and I always like hang on to this, the average consumer will always talk dry and drink sweet. And it's like, it's worth remembering. Like, it's just like, oh no, I don't like things too sweet. And when you look in their fridge and it's like full of Coca-Cola, it's like, okay, sure. Yeah, fair enough. Because no one out there is like, oh, I only like really sickeningly sweet things. Like, no one's ever going to call themselves out like that. It's just,
Well, since we jumped into the history lesson a bit, I would love to talk about apple varieties.
Sure. Oh, yeah. And I was going to ask, because that's on my list too. Could I just like eat one of these apples? Would I enjoy that? Like,
so the general rule is the uglier the apple, the tastier the cider.
Okay.
If you were to make a single varietal cider from a Granny Smith or a Gala or a Fuji or any, we're going to call them culinary or dessert apples. Those are the apples that you're generally seeing in mainstream grocery stores.
The show apples, yes.
that is going to ferment and taste like a seltzer. Like, you're not going to get a lot of apple-y nuance. The way that you do that with modern apples, modern, culinary, and what was the other word I used? Dessert apples. Those are all kind of the interchangeable terms. So I'm just going to say modern apples, because after this I'm going to talk about heirloom apples. The way that you get a nuanced modern cider is you blend a bunch of different apples, and based on their acid level, sugar level, tannin level, you figure out what's going to taste great together. And so that's generally what we're seeing when we're seeing modern ciders. That's going to be a blend. You don't see a lot of single varietals, meaning one type of apple, in like a commercial cider. But then there are heirloom apples, and those were the apples that were very popular before Prohibition era that were growing in America. Now, generally, some of those apples did come back, and they probably came back just from certain orchards having access and the ability to grow them, but they're like a lot harder to come by, generally speaking. Most apples that are produced in America are like the modern apples that we see in the grocery store. So my favorite single varietal old world apple is Harrison. It actually is from New Jersey, close to Newark, which is crazy because if you've been to Newark, New Jersey recently,
not a lot of apple trees growing there.
I don't think you would say, wow, this is a lush apple environment. But Harrison is my absolute favorite single varietal apple. There's 4 categories of apples. There's sweets, which is where those modern ones are. Sharps, that means high acid, low tannin. Bitter sweets, high acid, high tannin. And nope, bitter sweets is high tannin, low acid, and bitter sharps is high acid, high tannin. Okay. So, the bitter sweets and the bitter sharps are generally the heirloom apples. Some sharps are heirloom apples. So Harrison is a sharp apple, and it's just this lovely, acidic, experience. It goes so well with fatty foods like cheese or really anything. And I have never had a Harrison that I didn't like. And so there are some estate like orchard cideries that they're growing their apples and they're making the cider on premise. And some of them do a really great job with Harrisons. There's other cideries, like when I worked at Hale and True, we were an urban cidery. We were in South Philly. We didn't have an orchard. The cider maker would drive out to an area outside of Philly called Morgantown, which is kind of near Reading, for those that know where that is, and would pick up a blend of juice that he would like select. He would ask the cider, the orchard staff, like, these are the apples that we like want and for like specific fermenting purposes. So we would always get like a blend of modern apples. And some people in the cider world really look down at that. They think that if it's not an heirloom apple, then it's not as good, or it's not real cider. I went into cider and beer world more than wine because I thought that they weren't as pretentious as wine, and then I learned in every
it's all pretense, yeah.
there's always those people that are kind of just like, that's not legitimate, that's not real. And I don't think that we are at a point in the cider world where it's wise to be against each other. I think that we should be validating each other and not, like, it's good to have variety in a beverage category. Like, it's good to be different from one another. But yeah, so there are some really interesting apple varieties that I think personally sound like Harry Potter spells, that were like the old world original apples that either came from England or other countries. And some of those names include Roxbury Russet, Foxwhelp, Dabinet. Like, have you heard these names in the grocery store or even at a farmer's market?
No, of course not. Yeah.
So there are some really nice apples that you could see at occasional farmers markets that are great in cider. So one apple that I love eating and drinking from is Gold Rush. Like a Gold Rush apple, you get that at a farmer's market, you know it's going to be great. It ferments great. It's a great cider apple. Stamen or Stamen wine sap, that's another one. Like, you occasionally see it at like a fancy grocery store or farmer's market, but you're generally not going to see that at chain grocery.
Walmart, for sure not. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Red Delicious is the most misleading name of an apple I've ever heard. Red Delicious is not delicious, and it's just a sugar bomb.
Yes.
If you fermented that, it would be a neutral tasting seltzer.
Maybe a great basis for like a distillate, but maybe, I don't know about anything else.
So
it is good marketing, though.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. You were going to say distillate. Yeah.
So I said there were the four types of apples. There are 5 categories of cider, and distillates fall under dessert cider. So that would be Calvados, which is apple brandy from the Normandy region. That would be Pommeau. Pommeau is what in the wine world you would call a mistel. It's brandy that has then been blended with fresh juice, and it has a little bit more of like a viscous mouthfeel, and is very sweet, but it's also very like acidic, so it's like balanced out nicely, or it's more tannic. And there's also something called ice cider, which is like, I've heard that there's ice wine.
It's the same principle. Yeah.
where you're getting a block of frozen apple juice and collecting it and then fermenting it, and it's becoming this like delicious, flavorful, sweet apple-y distillate. There are some rules about ice cider. Technically, to say that you're an ice cider, it has to be made in Quebec. But if it is made in the style of ice, and perhaps it's being made in Vermont, they could write something like frost cider or like ice style cider. So that's one of the rules that comes through with cider. But so dessert cider is this really interesting vast category of these like distillate items that are just like, concentrated apple products, apple brandy, Pomo, everything
Well, the
else.
original distillate of America was Applejack, and so yeah.
Love me some Applejack.
Oh yeah. As a side note, if you're listening at home, don't try the ice cider thing by yourself. You concentrate everything when you do that, including the things you don't want to concentrate. It's also the like warning from anything that's ice concentrated. So yeah, don't distill at home. Buy it from a licensed person. All the general warnings.
100%. Yeah, ice cider is a very time-consuming, expensive process. That's why it's served in those super narrow glasses, or not bottles. I forget what the milliliter size is, but it's those like
probably like 200 milliliter if it's like ice wine.
Super thin, and you really only want to be savoring maybe like an ounce of it in a snifter. It's not something you're gonna pound and throw back quickly.
I don't know. Talk. We love our sweets down here, so.
Ice cider with blue cheese, incredible.
Awesome.
Because they match intensity. Blue cheese is this like strong, pungent, sour flavor, and that with like a bold ice cider, incredible.
Well, it is a classic pairing Roquefort with Sauterne. I'm guessing it'd be the same thing, but you get that like extra additional fruity element to it. That is cool. Like I do like it. The blend of apples makes intuitive sense to me, because like having one being turned into a cider being potentially boring makes sense to me. Also, in the whole like, again, I'm thinking wine, but like the monovarietal versus the blends, like and it's very classically like you get a lot more complexity when you blend. That's why you see so many blends in the wine world. It's like it just kind of makes sense, it's the same thing.
What's been your experience with cider? How many have you had a lot of different brands? Have you had dry cider? What's your...
There's a local producer that we carry at the restaurant, Saro. It's really good. They do a different range. They're out of Lincoln.
How do you spell that?
Saro.
I'm going to save it if I'm ever in your neck of the woods.
Oh, yeah. So they, of course, they do the whole range because, as you were saying, the sweet pays the bill. So we have it in the can. We only have the one option. It's a touch drier than a lot of people expect, but not bone dry. Because
their tap room is so beautiful.
Yeah. No, they're cool people. So
is it a restaurant too, or is it BYO food?
I believe that it is not. So I've never been to the tap room.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, because it's Lincoln. It's about an hour away.
Okay.
And I mostly go there for like. There's a couple stores we go down there, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Cool.
So I honestly don't drink a ton. When I'm at home, I honestly am more of a beer drinker. Just the ease, and it's what I have more often. That's why I was like I was transparently, I think we talked before here, like I know less than I know about a lot of things when I have someone on. So this is exciting and kind of weird for me, which is cool. I'm sure you deal with all the time. Yeah.
I am happy to talk to anyone that is cider curious. I love encouraging people to utilize cider the way you would use it in cooking, like with wine. Cider can be like an excellent ingredient in a sauce. It can deglaze a pan if you're sauteing onions or something. It's a lovely, just use it like you would use wine. And I also
that's nice too, because it's a lot of time more convenient packaging,
Yes. Yeah. You're not cracking open a whole bottle and then letting it sit there, and totally. And then I also love cider cocktails. I love using cider like you would a sparkling wine. So making like a lower ABV French 75. I encourage people, instead of using ginger beer, find a ginger cider and make a mule with it. Make a dark and stormy.
That's a cool idea. Yeah.
I mean, I told you one of my tricks earlier. If someone gives me a sweet cider, I'm just gonna make a cocktail with it. I don't want it to go to waste, but if I can't drink it on its own, I'm gonna find some utility for it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think the options are endless, and I think it goes so well with so many different foods, and I just think it's a really underappreciated beverage category, and I love putting people onto it and seeing that aha moment for them.
Yeah. With globalization, there's been a real homogenization of the options. Like we're all painting different culinary pictures of like very monochromatically. We only have a couple of different XYZs, and just adding one more category to that really does expand things more than you'd expect. So I do like that. Anytime I find someone pushing for something new, I'm like, cool. It's not just all Tito's. We could do something else here. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, even like using it in place of club soda or tonic water. Like jazz up your gin and tonic. Instead of using tonic water, use, a fruity or sweeter cider. There are so many different applications for it, and I encourage people to try it on. I generally, if someone's like a huge beer person and they're cider averse, I'll recommend a hopped cider to them, because hops are a familiar flavor for a beer lover. For winos, it's a little bit easier because I feel like they're a little bit more open once they like understand that it's apple wine. But
It's not apple beer. Yeah.
right, but yeah, I mean, still cider exists, and just like a standard still white wine, champagne exists. A lot of sparkling ciders exist, especially in this country. You can have a petulant, like a pet nat, an effervescent, lower carbonation cider. A lot of ciders get forced carbonated, which is perfectly cool too. So, and I also think that packaging matters with perception. I think that when something's in a can, I think there's just this perception that it's less fancy. I think glass bottles have this romantic fancy element to them.
For whatever the reason, it's here to stay. Yeah.
My personal take is, if something is in a can, it is intended to be enjoyed fresh and as soon as possible. Usually the canning date will be on the bottom of the can. I always say drink that within a year. Like a year should be like the top amount of time that you hold that can. And I recommend people storing cans in the fridge, because depending on who made it and what their practices are with stabilization, it's better for that to be in the fridge than it to be sitting out and being exposed to different temperatures throughout the year and possibly having a little explosive accident. So if it's in a can, drink that quickly. Enjoy it, savor it, don't covet your cans. If something's in a bottle, to me that says age it. And a wine and cider term, MLF, malolactic fermentation. So we know our buttery Chardonnays love a little bit of MLF to get that like creamy, buttery, whatever we want to call that flavor. And that's because because grapes contain malic acid, but mostly tartaric acid, right? Tartaric is the most...
The blend is malic, tartaric, and there's a touch of others, but yeah, okay. Mostly malic, yeah.
So apples are all malic. So apples actually, usually around a 6-month aging time frame, that's when you're going to get that nice, creamy, rounder, fuller mouthfeel, kind of like in the body level. You're going to get like something that's a little bit more like a 2% milk thickness or like viscosity. It's just going to be like a little rounder. But yeah, there's a lot of ML or MLF that's happening for ciders, and especially if it's being stored in a bottle and aged and it's being rounded out. And if something is bottled but with a crown cap, like an old, what we would see as like, an old school Coca-Cola bottle, a crown cap, that should be stored upright. That shouldn't be stored on its side. It doesn't need to be stored in the fridge, but it should be stored upright. If something is in a bottle but it is corked and then caged, that should be stored on its side, and technically you should be riddling it or turning it every couple weeks or months to keep the cork a consistent moisture level so that it doesn't possibly break when you're removing the cork.
Mm. Well, that's cool. Yeah.
Those are my hot takes on packaging. Thank you
there
for
you
asking.
go. Oh, yeah, of course. If someone's listening at home and they've stayed with us to this point in the podcast, where could they go to learn more about cider and more about what you do?
Sure. So I'll answer what I do first. I'm on social media as Blind Bear Claire. My website is Blind Bear Beverages. I am most active on Instagram, but I also have a TikTok and YouTube channel. And I also host events, mainly in Philadelphia, but I also travel. I did a tasting event in Atlanta earlier this month. Last weekend I was in Gettysburg for Pennsylvania Cider Fest, and I did a tasting. My bread and butter is I love doing snack pairings. I don't know if the barbecue chip comment earlier gave that away, but
yeah.
I mainly am hosting food and beverage classes. Tonight I'm doing a cheese and cider class at Fiddler Club in Philadelphia. I love pairing snacks with cider because I think it helps take that pretension out, especially if you're enjoying like a nostalgic like chip or cookie or something like that. It kind of
it's fun.
Makes people feel a little bit more like relatable and nostalgic to them. So sign up for a class. If you're in Philly, I do at least one monthly class at Philly Cheese School. That's my strongest partner right now. I adore the owner and her staff, and it's just a really beautiful event space. And occasionally, when there's time, I travel and go speak at conferences. I'm going to be speaking at Barrel and Flow. It's a craft beverage conference on Friday, August 7th in Pittsburgh. It's actually a full weekend of events. They have a beverage conference on Friday, a bottle share that night, and then the Saturday there's a beer festival where it's one of my favorite events. It's owned and operated by mostly folks of color and women, and in order to participate in the festival, you must be a Black-owned brewery or facility, and if you're not, you have to collab with a Black-owned brewery or a Black-owned business. So it still, while it fosters allyship, it keeps the focus on the people that have built that community and that event, and I just think that it's one of the most effective and like beautiful examples of productive or actual like impactful allyship that I've ever seen. And so I feel very lucky to have been picked to lead a cider conference session, just because I feel like very like humbled to like be seen as a resource and like a subject matter expert to like speak on it to communities like that. And yeah, so every once in a while I travel and I speak at conferences. I also love judging cider. I've judged at Glint Cap, which is the largest cider judging event in the world. It's in Michigan. Michigan is also in the top 5 apple producing states in the country. Mm-hmm. And that's in Grand Rapids, Michigan once a year, and you get to try so many different ciders and give feedback to makers, and you meet all these amazing people from all over the world and learn from them. And so come to my classes, come to an event that I'm speaking at, DM me if you have a question about apples. I consider myself pretty accessible, and I really love talking about it. So that's your answer to the second question. I need you to repeat the other question.
Where could someone listening and say they're not in Philadelphia, not near you, but they want to learn more about cider? What would you recommend to get them started?
So I highly recommend going on the American Cider Association's website. There's a tab about certifications, and even if you don't want to get your certified cider guide or eventually certified Pommelier certification, there's a couple helpful printable resources that you can just enjoy for free. So that's like a great way to just learn. There's, I believe, a 20-page packet that's the study guide for the cider guide exam, which is like level 1, the online one. And it just teaches you a little bit of those 5 different areas that just give you a little bit more context and understanding about the product of hard cider and where it comes from. And if you're also like looking to dive into it deeper, you can become like it's called BJCP cider judge. That's like the entity that certifies folks to become certified.
Beer,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So
that's
BJCP, they used to just be beer, but then they added cider and mead. So you can become a certified cider judge that way, or a certified mead judge that way. So those are
my brother's a big mead brewer, so yeah. that's the only reason I know a little bit about them. Yeah.
Mead is a cool category. There's also a hybrid drink. It's a mead cider baby called a Cider. Have you ever had a Cider?
Yeah, I at the last mead stampede last year. Yeah.
So instead of water and honey, it's apple juice and then honey, and apples and honey together. Incredible. Like,
it just makes sense.
Incredible. Yeah, totally. Oh, I forgot to mention another event I'm doing at Winterthur Museum. It's in Delaware. It's this beautiful property. It's like a garden and a museum. And they're offering this Taste of Terroir series in August, where every Saturday in August, one Saturday they're doing like a tasting for olive oil. The next week it's like chocolate, and then they're doing a cider one. So
cool.
Members from that museum are going to come and like enjoy local ciders on their property, and I'm so excited to do that because it's going to be the largest tasting I've ever hosted, because they can host up to 60 people in a session. So that's going to be really fun.
That's cool. I saw that on your Instagram, your links. Yeah. So I was wondering about that one. Okay.
But yeah, Cider Association's website, looking into BJCP. If you're not trying to get that technical, one of my favorite books, it's by a certified cider guide named Beth Demon, and it is called The Beer Lover's Guide to Cider. And it's a small one-day read, and it goes through every style of beer, and it's very just user-friendly, meet people where they're at. It's, if you like this type of beer, try this type of cider, and here are some producers that make it. And cool. I really like that, just because it's like, well, what if I don't want to become a sommelier? Like, what if I just want to try more cider and like don't know where to start? I love that she gives examples, and she helps connect people where they're like, oh, if I like a saison, maybe I'll like this style of cider, and and here's where I can get it. And I highly recommend like supporting cideries, cider clubs. It's just like a wine club. If you enjoy a certain winery, you can have cider shipped to your home if you live out of state. Like I'm a cider club member for Graft, because they're based in upstate New York, and so I get cider shipped to me from them. And every month I get excited to see like, what did I get sent this month?
Yes.
So yeah, there's like a lot of ways to look into it. I think starting with that book is helpful if someone's a reader. But yeah, also there's like a ton of different like if you dive into Reddit or like look into other blogs, like there's a lot of different people out there that are, can put you on to different things. And I think in the age of technology, it's super, super easy and accessible to learn more if you want to put the time in.
Yeah, and I mean, worst case scenario, Google cider near me. You'll find something somewhere. Yeah, if you were listening to that and you didn't have the ability to write that down, I will have links to the things that she just mentioned there in the show notes, so you can kind of click over, make sure that we'll make all that nice and easy. Yeah, Claire, thanks for joining us today. It was a pleasure to talk about apples for a little while.
It was so nice chatting with you. It was super easy and fun, and yeah, I feel like we're in the same room together. I wish we were cracking open some ciders together right now.
Oh, soon enough. A lot of people fly through Omaha, so it'll happen.
I just made a Google Maps folder for Nebraska, so
there you go.
We're manifesting it.
Heck yeah.
Thank you for listening. That is today's episode. Now, if you have not taken a moment to check out our website, please do. It's servesyouRightPod.com. We have past episodes and all sorts of other things there. If you want to get in touch with me, that's the place to do it. I do appreciate that you've given me your most valuable asset, your time and attention. So thank you for listening, and stay tuned. We have some really cool guests coming up. I would hate it if you missed it. Cheers.